China's rise as a global superpower has shifted the balance of power. With its massive economy, cutting-edge tech, and growing influence. Meanwhile, the US remains a dominant force with its innovation, military might, and cultural reach. But as tensions simmer, think trade disputes, tech wars, and diplomatic standoffs, can China thrive without relying on the US? Or is the relationship too intertwined to break? We'll explore this through 10 key points, looking at trade, technology, global influence, and more. Whether you're a geopolitics nerd or just curious about the world, stick around. This is going to be a deep dive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our daily takes on global issues. Let's jump in. Economic interdependence. China and the US have one of the world's largest trade relationships, with bilateral trade hitting $690 billion in 2024. The US is a top market for Chinese exports like electronics and machinery, while China buys US agricultural goods, like soybeans, worth $40 billion annually. This interdependence fuels both economies. China gets a massive consumer base, and the US gets affordable goods. But China's been diversifying, boosting trade with ASEAN, $975 billion in 2024, and the EU. Its Belt and Road Initiative has opened markets in Africa and Central Asia. Still, decoupling isn't easy. US tariffs and export controls, like those on semiconductors, hit China hard, but China's domestic consumption, 40% of GDP, and growing middle class, 500 million people, reduce reliance. Yet, the US dollar's dominance in global trade and China's $3 trillion in US debt holdings tie them together. While China can lean on other markets, losing the US would sting, short-term pain for long-term gain. Technology and innovation. Tech is a battleground. The US leads in cutting-edge innovation. Think AI, quantum computing, and chip design. Companies like Nvidia and Intel dominate, and US export controls since 2022 have restricted China's access to advanced semiconductors. This hurts firms like Huawei, which saw a 30% revenue drop in its chip division. But China's fighting back, investing $150 billion in its semiconductor industry and pushing AI giants like Baidu and Tencent. Its 5G rollout is unmatched, with 2.5 million base stations by 2025. China's also closing the gap in patents, filing 1.6 million in 2024, surpassing the US. Still, it relies on US software and tools for chip design. While China's self-reliance push is strong, US tech restrictions force costly workarounds. Can China innovate fast enough to break free? It's making strides, but the US remains a critical piece of the global tech puzzle for now, especially for high-end chips and software ecosystems. Global financial systems. The US dollar rules global finance, with 88% of international transactions in 2024. China's yuan accounts for just 3%, despite efforts to internationalize it. China holds $3.2 trillion in foreign reserves, much in US treasuries, giving the US leverage. Sanctions, like those on Russia in 2022, show how the US can weaponize finance, a risk for China. Beijing's pushing alternatives like CIPS, its cross-border payment system, handling $20 trillion in 2024, but it's no match for SWIFT. China's also promoting digital yuan, used in 15 countries, but adoption is slow. US financial dominance means China needs access to dollar-based markets to stabilize its economy and fund global projects like Belt and Road. Breaking free requires a stronger yuan and global trust, which could take decades. For now, China's financial moves depend on navigating US-controlled systems, making full independence tough. military and geopolitical influence. Militarily, the US outspends China with a $877 billion defense budget in 2024, compared to China's $292 billion. The US has 11 aircraft carriers. China has 3. Alliances like NATO and AOKs give it global reach, while China's partnerships like with Russia are narrower. But China's modernizing fast. Its hypersonic missiles and 400-ship navy are closing the gap. Geopolitically, China's Belt and Road spans 40 countries, boosting its influence in Asia and Africa. Yet the US shapes global norms through institutions like the UN and IMF, where China's voice is growing but not dominant. Tensions over Taiwan and the South China Sea highlight risks. US naval presence challenges China's regional ambitions. While China doesn't need US military support, avoiding conflict is key. A stable US relationship prevents escalation, as war would disrupt China's economic goals. For now, cautious coexistence is critical. Energy and resources. China's the world's top energy consumer, using 150 exajoules in 2024, and relies on imports for 70% of its oil and 40% of its gas. The US, a net energy exporter, supplies 10% of China's oil imports, worth $25 billion. But China's diversifying with Russia and Saudi Arabia as bigger suppliers. Its renewable push is massive. 50% of global solar capacity and 600 gigawatts of wind power by 2025. Still, US tech like fracking equipment supports China's energy sector. China's also hoarding critical minerals, controlling 60% of global rare earths, while the US pushes domestic mining. Energy security drives China's Belt and Road deals in Central Asia and Africa, reducing US reliance. However, global oil markets priced in dollars keep the US relevant. China could survive without US energy, but disruptions in US-China trade could spike costs, forcing China to lean on costlier or less stable suppliers short-term. Consumer markets and cultural influence. The US is a massive consumer market, with 330 million people and $15 trillion in retail spending in 2024. Chinese brands like Xiaomi and Shine thrive there, generating $50 billion in sales. Losing access would hurt. But China's domestic market, with 1.4 billion people and $7 trillion in consumption, is a powerhouse. China's also expanding in Southeast Asia and Africa, where its affordable products dominate. Culturally, US influence. Hollywood, music, tech giants, shapes global trends, while China's soft power, TikTok, K-dramas is growing but lags. US sanctions could limit Chinese brands' access, as seen with TikTok bans in 2023. Still, China's building its own cultural ecosystem, with platforms like WeChat and Douyin serving 1 billion users. While the US market boosts profits, China's domestic and regional focus means it could pivot. Cultural reliance on the US is minimal, but market access matters. Supply chains and manufacturing. China's the world's factory, producing 30% of global manufactured goods in 2024, worth $4.5 trillion. The US relies on China for electronics, pharmaceuticals, and more. But China needs US components like chips and aircraft parts. Tariffs and reshoring efforts since 2022 have pushed companies like Apple to diversify to India and Vietnam. China's countering with dual circulation, boosting domestic supply chains and investing $200 billion in high-tech manufacturing. Still, US restrictions on equipment, like ASML's lithography machines, slow China's progress. China's building alternatives, but full self-sufficiency is years away. Losing US inputs would disrupt production, raising costs. Conversely, the US needs China's manufacturing scale. Both economies are entangled. China could shift to other suppliers, but the US remains a key cog in its supply chain for now. Education and talent exchange. The US attracts 350,000 Chinese students annually, contributing $15 billion to its economy in 2024. These students drive innovation, with 25% of US STEM graduates being Chinese nationals. Many return to China, boosting its tech sector. Think AI experts at Baidu, but US visa restrictions since 2023, citing security, have cut student flows by 20%. China's countering by investing $100 billion in universities like Tsinghua, producing 2 million STEM graduates yearly. It's also luring talent through programs like 1,000 Talents, attracting 8,000 researchers by 2025. While the US offers unmatched academic prestige, China's domestic education system is closing the gap. Losing US access would slow China's talent pipeline, but it's not critical. China's producing enough skilled workers domestically. Still, US research ecosystems remain a draw, and restrictions could push China to lean harder on homegrown innovation. Climate and global challenges. Climate change demands global cooperation. China, the top CO2 emitter, 10.2 billion tons in 2024, and the US, 4.7 billion tons are key players. Their 2021 Glasgow pledge to cut emissions by 2030 relies on joint tech development, like carbon capture, where the US leads. China's renewable dominance, 60% of global solar panel production, complements US innovation. Without US collaboration, China's climate goals could falter, as US funding and tech accelerate progress. Conversely, China's cheap green tech helps US decarbonization. Beyond climate, pandemics and cybersecurity need joint efforts. U.S. China talks in 2024 set cyber norms. China could go solo with $1 trillion in green investments, but U.S. expertise and global frameworks amplify impact. Isolation risks inefficiencies and slower progress. For global challenges, mutual reliance persists, even if trust is shaky. Strategic autonomy versus global stability. China's push for strategic autonomy, self-reliance in tech, food and energy, is a response to US pressure. Its Made in China plan has cut reliance on US tech by 30%, and food security programs ensure 95% grain self-sufficiency. But autonomy comes at a cost. $500 billion in subsidies strain its economy. The US, with its global alliances and dollar dominance, can disrupt China's plans through sanctions or trade barriers. Meanwhile, global stability hinges on US-China cooperation. Think trade routes, nuclear non-proliferation, or counterterrorism. A complete break risks economic shocks, with global GDP potentially dropping 5%. IMF estimate. China doesn't need the US to survive, but a stable relationship avoids costly disruptions. Full decoupling is possible but painful. China's betting on self-reliance while navigating US influence to maintain global leverage. And there you have it. 10 reasons why China's relationship with the US is complex. From trade and tech to global challenges, China's pushing hard for self-reliance, but the US remains a key player in its economic, technological, and geopolitical plans. Full decoupling is possible, but it'd be a rough ride for both. What do you think? Can China go it alone, or are these two giants too intertwined? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe for more global insights every day. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.